Hi folks, and welcome back to Adam's Autos. Now, it's been quite a while since I've done anything about this, or I say I've done anything, whether you've seen anything about the FZR. And it's been that long, I can't even remember what my last post was, so I'm going to give you an update. Obviously, I've got it all ready, MOT ready. I felt I got about as far as I could regarding fitting the carbs, etc, etc. So the only thing left to do was to run it down to an MOT. I subsequently done that. It was okay. I did get a kind of an advisory on the faults. I got an advisory on the fault seal, which has since started leaking. But that was kind of the least of my worries. The main premise to run it for an MOT is obviously this bike hasn't been on the road for 15 years. So I wanted to see if there's any other issues I need to be aware of before we look to getting this thing road ready. As I say, fortunately it was okay. The only other issue I had was the stoplight switch on the handlebar. It's like a £10 item that was ordered and changed in 5 minutes. Yeah, and that left the, which leaves the fault signal, as I say. That I would deal with in due course. The main issue for me was to then get it down to my mate's workshop for a tune-up. And that's where the issues began. It was started, I ran it back from, I think I took it down, after I went for an MOT, I went for just a sort of ride around the back roads quick to ascertain where we are, you know, with general running. The chassis I've got no worries about. I know they're old tyres. Again, once I've got this to where I want it to be, then I'll worry about doing the tyres. You know, it was a case of making sure this thing was running right first. Yeah, and it weren't revving great. It would rev out, but I'd have flat spot, etc, etc. And then on the way back to the unit, the exhaust fell off. Yeah, now the eagle-eyed long, that's nothing to do with the exhaust, by the way. It was a bit of scaffold I'd popping up the tank, but okay, the eagle-eyed long, you will notice this is now a different silencer. So on my way back, there was a clunk, it got loud, and I'm like, what the hell? It turned out that the silencer, another thing I'd had issues with, decided to remove itself. And I think what it had done was the bolt there. Now, those of you old British bikes will be used to bolts removing themselves, and I've had one or two on older bikes as well, you know, Japanese stuff. That removed itself, so that then meant that the only thing keeping the exhaust on the downpipe was the clamp, which slowly decided it didn't want to be there either. So, crux of the matter was the exhaust fell off somewhere down the road, just from here. I thought, right, well, I'm a few hundred yards from the workshop, or look up workshop. It's a bit of a, I use that term loosely. I rode it back in. I thought by the time I walk up to where it fell off, it should have cooled down enough. I stopped quickly just to get it out of the road. Went back and got it, and sort of discovered that I mean, I've actually straightened it out a little bit, but it was a lot worse than that. That weren't going back on, and as I say, the clamp that held it there, that was even worse. So I'm like, what do I do now? Try and find the right link pipe again, or find another silencer. Unfortunately, there was a couple of original silencers on eBay. They're 80 quid, I think they were, around that price. So that's what I've done. It's now sporting an original silencer. This bike is, obviously it's not exactly concours, but it's now pretty much original. So that's what it's got. So I fitted that. Happy days, all done. I had to cut the original clamp off because that was all buggered up, you know, seized and God knows what else. So cut that one off, fitted in a separate clamp, because the original ones, the clamp is actually attached to the link pipe. So yeah, get rid of that. Put another clamp on. That was that. Okay, went back to running it, and it just seemed like it was going back to where it started again. I'm thinking fueling again. The fuel pump didn't seem to be doing its thing. I bought another fuel pump, didn't do any different. In fact, it didn't click at all, which is weird, but anyway. So I put the original one back on. It now seems to be working all right again. So God knows what that was. Anyway, so the original fuel pump's back on. Fits new fuel lines as well. That was that. And yeah, a couple of weeks ago, it was literally running on 1, maybe 2 cylinders. I thought, this cannot be a fueling issue anymore. I've done that to high heaven. So I thought, well, we'll get back to it. We'll sort of start from scratch again. We know these are working okay-ish, minus a tune. You know, the fueling's doing its thing. So we'll look back up at around the ignition area. And I thought, right, we'll get the plugs out. I don't know what condition the plugs are in. And needless to state, when I pulled the plugs out, whilst the tips themselves, well, one tip had removed itself, which kind of worried me. But then I spoke to a guy down at the workshop that I managed to find the spark plugs. It took me 3 attempts, and bear in mind, there's quite a few bike shops in the Southend area. It was a case of third time lucky for a shop that had the plugs for this. So it tells you a lot. You know, these are things like this that are old hat, and the stock for them isn't the same as what it would have been, you know, even probably 10 years ago. Anyway, got a new set of plugs. The plugs that I pulled out, as I said, one, the tip had disintegrated, which was worrying me, thinking, oh, great, you know, this has done the engine or whatever. Yeah. But the guy down at that shop said it's quite a common thing with these. So he said, you know, don't pay no mind. So I'm like, okay, you've got more experience with these. This is my first. Whether it be my only FZR, that I cannot tell you, but I've had no prior experience with these. This has been a fresh thing. So anyway, yeah, that was that plug. The others was, yeah, they look like they've been in there for some time. That's the only way I can put it. Maybe it's where I should have started, but I didn't, because the guy that owned it previously said he thought there was an electrical issue and he'd swap the coils out. Which, as it turned out, when I had a closer look at the coils, they weren't. Actually, that's the old coil pack, which probably work all right now, my luck. But these are the coils that fitted. They're not standard. Well, definitely not standard, because they've had a wiring patch in, so I don't know if they're right for the bike. Anyway, I found an original set. They were like 50 quid. The other thing that was sort of putting me off to doing the plugs is getting to them, because you've got to pull all this out to get to them. Actually, it's not hard. It's just, yeah, you just basically got to connect all this, undo that, and then take this out to get to the plugs. But they themselves aren't hard to remove. It's just a bit of a ball ache to do it. So yes, put the new plugs in, the new coils, and this is the result. So we turn ignition on. There we go, the pump's doing what it's supposed to, which is happy days for me. Put that on. I have actually run it up because there wasn't any fuel in the carbs. You can see I'm running a intravenous bottle for the minute, just to get it all sorted. Right, so that's on. And that's a lot better. So we're now at that point where I need to run it down and get the carbs all up to, you know, the carbs set up. So that's as far as I can now go without handing it over to someone else, and that will be hopefully the next content. When that happens, it's a bit up in the air at the moment, because I've actually got a little I've got to kind of throw my weight behind my boat stuff at the moment. If you can see back there, I've got to dig this out in a minute and run some fuel through it, because I want to get out on the Medway tomorrow. That should be all right. The lesson I've learned with these is when you don't use them, drain them of fuel. But yeah, that's a separate boating issue. This is a bike issue. So yeah, that's where we are. Now the one downside is the guy that was due to do the tune-up is actually, he's sort of closing up, as it were. The workshop that he had, he was only doing it a couple of nights a week on a Saturday, but he's since become ensconced with a lady that lives in another part of Essex, and he's sort of, you know, he's winding down, so he said he can no longer do these. I've got the contact number of someone else's should, so I just have to work from now. So yeah, this has been a bit of an interesting time because, as I say, that Alistair, the guy's been looking after my bikes for sort of the last 10 to 15 years, and some of my car stuff as well. He's now winding up, so I've got to sort out another bike guy who can do the stuff that I can't. And not only that, but I've got to sort out another car guy, because Alistair used to deal with my cars like prior to Saab ownership. I'm now post Saab ownership, temporarily at least. And the guy that I used to deal with my Saabs, that's all he deals with. Well, Saabs and classic cars, that's all he deals with. So me now having a FZR, it's not exactly a classic car. It's good as gold, don't get me wrong. This is doing a fabulous job. I've been able to cart all my stuff about and being ULEZ compliant. So that is filling in a gap manfully that the two Saabs left. I wish it was, my two downside is I wish it was more comfortable. It's okay, but it's nowhere on a Saab league. And it doesn't have cruise control, but I've heard I can retrofit one. But I'll deal with that in due course. So yeah, so I'm not only had to sort out one new mechanic for the bikes, I've got to sort one out for cars as well. But we'll see where we go with that. But just one more thing. Hopefully, if all goes to plan with the Yamaha, get that to point, I can then take that to where I live, because I don't live in Southend. My lock-up's in Southend, but I don't live here. I used to live on Canby, so this is a little trek for me. But hopefully, once I've got that up to speed, I can take it down to where I live on Canby. That then leaves space. Let's just turn it off quick. Alright, so I'm quite happy with that. About as happy as I'm going to be. Once the Yamaha's dealt with, it's then a case of moving on to my Thunderbird. And that will be a separate story, literally will, because I've had this old girl since 2013. So it's now come up 13 years of ownership. The last couple of years have been very turbulent. Not quite of the bike's fault, it's just how things have happened. The bike come off the road for an issue, got it back on the road, and then come off again, got it back on, and then I got rear-ended, and then it come off again for months while I was in storage with insurance. Got it back again, and the same problem with it said, tried to fix it for a third time, didn't happen, so we've sort of had to get I've got another engine for it. But that will be another story. I'm going to concentrate on getting this roadworthy. Hopefully we'll get it done I would like to think in the next 6 weeks. This Sophia's got going for an MOT for the next couple of weeks, and being as it's a new car to me, I don't know the car. The Saabs I knew, so I kind of knew what to expect, but even then they threw up a googly, which is why I no longer have them. But I've got to get that in for an MOT next couple of weeks. Once I know where I'm at with this, then it's literally all systems go with the Yami, and fingers crossed we'll have two running bikes instead of just the Honda. Right, I'm going to leave it there. I've waffled on for quite a bit now. Hopefully you haven't fallen asleep or anything, but yeah, definitely stay tuned to this channel for more bike and car related content. I know most of it's been bike at the moment, we're trying to do some car stuff. Yeah, stay tuned. Thanks so much, everybody. Also, before I forget, if you like your paranormal content, if you like stuff about Essex Boys murders, which I've also covered in some length, then I'll drop a link here to my other channel, and you can check out all that stuff to your heart's content. I'm going to leave it there. Thanks very much. Love and light. God bless. See you in the next one.